The man skillfully inserted the sniper rifle into the rope and then tightly wound it 2 times, instantly creating a simple stable armor. Then he quickly set up the gun, looked through the 8 times magnifying glass, and tightly stared at the pumpkin bullseye 1,000 meters away. Seeing that the sight slightly deviated from the target, he immediately took out a screwdriver and made a slight calibration of the 8 times magnifying glass, aimed at the pumpkin again, pulled the trigger, but the bullet still deviated slightly. In order to pursue the ultimate shooting effect, he constantly adjusted the shooting scale and changed the film. As a top assassin, he knew that every shot was related to life and death, so he immediately took out an aluminum thermite bomb, carefully inserted it into the narrow magazine, then adjusted his breathing, aimed and shot. With a shot, the pumpkin instantly burst apart. Seeing that the gun was adjusted almost perfectly, the assassin immediately rushed to the assassination destination and planned to assassinate President de Gaulle at the parade ceremony 3 days later. In order to ensure that the gun could be smoothly brought into the scene, he drove to a modified workshop, used a saw to cut the exhaust pipe under the car, and then disassembled the parts of the gun one by one, using plastic wrap to wrap repeatedly to ensure that it would not be wet by the exhaust gas. Finally, the gun was stuffed into the exhaust pipe and reinstalled back to the car chassis. However, just as he drove to the border to prepare for the assassination, a police officer suddenly found something amiss. In order to assassinate the president, the man spent a lot of money to buy a miniature sniper rifle. Then he immediately came to the wild hills and planned to calibrate the accuracy of the gun. Seeing the pumpkin burst instantly, he quickly hid the gun in the exhaust pipe and then drove to the border. The driver entered the crime scene. Unexpectedly, when he submitted his passport, a police officer suddenly requested to check the luggage. Fortunately, Jesse had hidden the gun in advance to avoid being impounded on the spot, but he didn't know that he was about to face a big disaster, because the police had received the news that a killer code named Ghost was going to sneak into the ceremony site to assassinate the president. They had even investigated Jesse's residence and immediately dispatched a large number of police forces to go to the hotel where he was hiding to carry out the arrest. Fortunately, Jesse's superior gave him a tip-off, allowing him to evacuate 1 step ahead of the police. But he accidentally saw a couple playing poker in the wild hills, so while the other party was having a hot game, he quietly exchanged the license plates with his own and even changed the color of the car, planning to use this car to mix into the ceremony venue. But on the way, he accidentally had a friction with a car, and the modified car was scrapped on the spot. Seeing that the owner of the collided car was completely cool, Jesse had to drive the other person's car to continue forward. Soon he arrived at the crime scene after a detailed observation. He targeted the top floor directly opposite the stands, where the view was undoubtedly the best sniping location to cover up. He came to the roadside stall to buy a set of clothes and selected several fake medals in the market. Seeing that the ceremony site was held as scheduled, he immediately disguised himself as a retired veteran and hobbled into the venue with a crutch. Unexpectedly, at this time, a guard suddenly stopped him and asked him to show the relevant documents for admission, which made Jesse instantly dumbfounded. The killer bought a set of Jongshan suits at the market, then disguised himself as an anti-Japanese war veteran, attempting to mix into the parade ceremony site to take the opportunity to assassinate President de Gaulle. As a result, he was subjected to rigorous scrutiny by the guards. However, fortunately, he had forged an officer's certificate in advance and successfully deceived the other party's eyes. So he immediately came to the best sniping point, removed his fake ones, and slowly pulled open the curtain to measure the distance and angle of the sniping with the naked eye. While the president had not yet arrived at the scene, he quickly removed the gun components from the crutch, carried out a detailed assembly, and then brought a chair as a bracket to steadily aim the sniper rifle in the shooting direction. At this time, the parade site was already heavily guarded, and all the armored tanks were deployed, and hundreds of cavalry were on high alert just to protect the president's safety. Even on the roofs within 100 miles, there were special forces on strict guard. The police have also strengthened security measures, making it extremely difficult to snipe the president. At this time, President de Gaulle finally personally arrived at the scene, and he stood in the center of the square and solemnly declared the parade to begin. But at this exciting moment, a detective suddenly came, and he urgently asked the guard if a disabled officer had entered the venue. After learning the situation, the two immediately rushed towards the killer's room, but obviously, it was too late at this time. The killer had already locked the president's head with an 8 times magnifying glass and resolutely pulled the trigger. Seeing that the first shot was cleverly evaded by the president, the killer quickly loaded the bullet, but when he was about to pull the trigger, the detective suddenly burst into the door. Although he promptly killed the guard, due to the slow loading speed, he was directly hit by the detective like a beehive. Eventually, this assassination operation ended in failure, and the detective successfully saved the president's life and made a great contribution to the stability of the country.